All right, let's jump right in. We all think we know the story of David and Goliath, right? The little shepherd boy, the massive giant, the one-in-a-million shot. But here's the thing. This isn't just a story about faith. It's really a masterclass in strategy and, honestly, asymmetrical warfare. I mean, for thousands of years, this has been the go-to story for the little guy beating the big guy. It's become this huge symbol of courage against impossible odds. But what if I told you that's not the whole picture? What if David walked onto that battlefield with a way better weapon, a brilliant plan, and actually had a pretty clear path to victory? What if he wasn't just taking a wild gamble, but was actually executing a killer strategy?
So today, we're going to peel back the layers of this legend. We're going to see how it's really about a brilliant tactician who just completely rewrote the rules of the fight. And to do that, we have to start with his opponent.
First, you gotta understand who or what Goliath really was. He wasn't just some big guy. He was basically a weapon of psychological warfare. And believe me, it was working. He had an entire army totally paralyzed with fear. So, picture this. The Philistines and the Israelites are camped out on opposite hills, just staring at each other. It's a total stalemate. Then, this champion, Goliath, steps out and makes a deal. He says, hey, instead of a massive, bloody battle, just send one guy to fight me. Winner takes all. And the Israelite army, they are absolutely terrified. Nobody wants to go. And what's really interesting is that historians still debate how big he actually was. The most common Hebrew text says he was 9'9". I mean, that's just unbelievable. But other ancient texts, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, put him closer to 6'9". Now, that's still a giant for that era for sure, but that difference just goes to show you that even the most basic facts of this story are a little more complicated than we usually think.
So into this mess walks David. And he is not the simple, pure-hearted kid we see in storybooks. The actual text gives us a much more complex and, frankly, a way more interesting character.
So, on the one hand, David is genuinely theologically outraged. His first words on the scene are all about defending God's honor. He doesn't see Goliath's challenge as an insult to the army. He sees it as a direct insult to God. But then, almost in the same breath, he asks, so, what's the prize for the guy who takes him out? You see, he's a savvy operator. He wants to know about the reward, the money, marrying the king's daughter, and hey, tax breaks for his whole family. He's got faith, absolutely, but he's also got some very practical ambitions. Okay, this is where David's genius really kicks in. It's not just about his bravery, it's about his tactical mind. He gets something that King Saul and every single soldier in that army is completely missing. King Saul's idea is totally by the book. He tries to load David up with his own heavy armor and a sword. He's basically trying to turn David into a small-scale Goliath and setting him up to fight a close-up battle that he is 100% guaranteed to lose. David wants no part of that. He knows he can't win by playing Goliath's game. So, he just changes the game completely. He refuses to fight hand-to-hand. He's going to be a ranged fighter, turning Goliath's biggest strengths, all that size and armor, into his biggest weaknesses.
Now this is the crucial point, so you gotta get this. A shepherd's sling was not a toy. It was a deadly long-range weapon. Experts figure a good slinger could whip a stone at something like 100 to 150 miles per hour. That's faster than a fastball from a major league pitcher today. David didn't bring a toy to a sword fight. He brought the ancient world's equivalent of a handgun.
So now we get to the fight itself. Everyone's expecting this big, heavy metal brawl. But David, he has other plans, and he announces them with just total confidence. I mean, this is some epic, all-time trash talk, right? David frames the whole battle perfectly. He says, this isn't about me versus you. This is about your gods versus the God of Israel. He's turning this personal duel into a divine contest. And the takedown itself is just pure tactical precision. First, notice he runs towards Goliath. Why? To shorten the distance and make his shot more accurate. Then boom, boom, boom. One shot, one stone, and the giant goes down. But look at that last step. That's key. David uses Goliath's own massive sword to finish him. It's symbolic, it's brutal, and it's the perfect end of the fight. Now, right after this amazing victory, the story hits us with this famous puzzle, a kind of plot hole that has confused people for centuries. It seems like King Saul suddenly gets a case of amnesia. You gotta remember, David had already been hanging around Saul's court, playing the harp for him. Saul knew who he was. So why on earth is he asking, who is this kid? Is it just a mistake in the text? A sloppy contradiction?
Well, the answer is hiding in the original Hebrew. See, Saul doesn't ask, "Who are you?" He asks, "Ben me." And that translates very specifically to, "Son of whom are you?" He's not asking for David's name, he's asking for his dad's name. But why?
And this is what makes it all click. Remember that prize David was asking about? Saul had made a public promise. The man who beats Goliath gets his entire family wiped off the tax rolls forever. Saul's question isn't about memory loss, it's about paperwork. He needs to know the name of the family patriarch, Jesse, so he can make good on the deal. And just like that, the puzzle is solved.
But this story does not end with a big celebration and everyone living happily ever after. David's greatest moment of triumph immediately kicks off his greatest period of danger. This victory isn't the end of a war, it's the start of a brand new one.
We have to remember the dark cloud hanging over King Saul's head. The prophet Samuel has already told him that God has rejected him as king and has chosen his replacement, someone better than you.
And in that moment, as David stands there, the hero of Israel, you can bet Saul is looking at him and seeing that prophecy come true right before his eyes. This amazing, popular, divinely blessed young man isn't his kingdom's savior, he's the king's replacement. David didn't just kill a giant, he ignited the paranoia of a king, and that started a whole new battle that would end up defining both of their lives. So the real story isn't just about how David won, but about what that victory was really going to cost him.